I could not believe the amount that came out of this. What I'd done is, having ridden it again, was just basically I'd filled the tank up to get home. I'd cleaned the inside of the tank, got all the rust off it by bouncing along, and I just pumped it down to the bottom. Hello and welcome to another beautiful spring day. I mentioned in my last video how much I absolutely love this time of year. After a bit of a wet and cold winter, it is so nice to get out and enjoy a bit of sunlight, a bit of warmth. Not that it's super warm today, about 17 degrees or something like that. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. Also in my last video, which if you didn't see, I will leave a link in the description or on the screen somewhere, so you can go and have a bit of a look. I discussed this bike that I'm on. I sort of gave a bit of a look around, a tour around the bike, and I mentioned that it had a fairly interesting story to it. So I thought I might tell you about that story, how I picked this up with really, really low kilometers. Even though it was a 9-year-old bike, it was virtually brand new, which is great, and I really love that. But it also comes with some problems, and they were quite expensive problems that did end up costing me quite a little bit of money to get it on the road. So let me get somewhere slightly more interesting to ride than amongst traffic, and we'll continue the chat then. Well, I was hoping for some picturesque backdrop to do this, but this is going to have to do some random farmways driveway. Anyway, this is the bike in question that I'm talking to you about. I did show this in the last video, but I thought, hey, if you're new here, you might want to have a bit of a look. This is, of course, Triumph Speed Triple, and it is currently it's 10 years old. I've had it for about a year. It was 9 years old. Now, when I bought it, it had 2,100 kilometers on it. When the guy who was selling it actually originally put it up for sale, it had just 1,600 kilometers, which is about 1,000 miles. So barely running on a 9-year-old bike. It's in very, very good condition. Obviously, it's virtually factory condition. It's got the aftermarket Remus pipes and everything. I've done a couple of thousand kilometers on it, so that's really the only. I've done just enough to wear out a front and back tire. I've got a brand new front tire on it, and but I'll talk you through it. So in the meantime, let's get going. So I decided after a couple of years of not having a road bike, I have actually been riding motorcycles overall for about 20 years, but I did have a couple of year break where I didn't have a road bike. I just had a dirt bike because I thought I'd try that out, and I'm rubbish at it. But I wanted to get back in the road scene, so I was looking around, and I guess what I was probably ideally looking for is something like a KTM, or something about KTM Super Duke that really appealed to me. But you know, I thought I'll see what's around in that sort of category. I wanted something naked. Ducati Street Fighter would be nice, but they're sort of the next financial level up. So anyway, I saw this bike, and it was advertised with 2,100 kilometers on it. And like, I wouldn't say the price on it was cheap. It was certainly up there, not unreasonable, but it was a higher price. So I thought, well, or to have a look at other bikes, I should say. So I thought, why not have a look at this bike as well? And I messaged him and I said, look, I'm interested in your bike, but you've got 2,100 kilometers written in your ad. Do you mean 21,000 kilometers? Because that's about right. You kind of, you know, a lot of people buy motorbikes as hobbies. They don't put huge kilometers on them. And 21,000 Ks on a 9-year-old bike like this, I thought, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. And he wrote back and he said, no, I'm aware of what I wrote. I'm paraphrasing here, I can't remember exactly. He said, no, I'm aware of what I put on there, and it is correct. 2,100 kilometers. So anyway, I ended up giving the guy a ring, and I sort of said, right, what's the go with the bike? What's the deal? Has it been crashed? Has it got a new engine in it? You know, how has this happened? And yeah, that's when he told me he actually originally advertised it at just 1,600 kilometers or 1,000 miles. He bought this, and I think he got a new job, and then I think he had some kids, and he just never used it. He bought it, he rode it around, he ran it in, and that was it. It just sat in his garage. So anyway, I went down and met him, and as soon as I got there and saw it, I could tell immediately that this guy was legit. You could see just by looking at the bike that it had done absolutely no work at all, and chicken strips on it an inch wide, and you know, barely worn any rubber off it. You could just tell by looking at the thing that it hadn't been used. In the end, I decided there and then on the day that I was going to buy that bike off him. I mean, it's a 2-hour drive to get to the city that it was in. There's a lot of gravel on this corner. I might take that with caution. So anyway, on the spot, there's a lot of gravel on this corner. Try not to drop it. There you are. Anyway, I bought the bike and jumped on it for the boring ride up the highway, and the bike felt fine, but I did about halfway, I think I went to overtake a car, and I pulled out and gave it a squirt, and I thought, you know, it's got power for sure, but it didn't feel as much of a jump over my last road bike, which was another Triumph, but a street triple 675, which I absolutely love, by the way. But it didn't feel like it had been a couple of years, but honestly my brain was like, this bike's got the same amount of power as the street triple. I don't understand what's going on. Anyway, that was the ride back. Took it out for a very casual ride. There's a lot of gravel on these corners out here. I don't know what's going on, but nearly every corner has got a nice covering of gravel on it. Anyway, took it out for a bit of a ride, and again I thought, geez, this thing's not as powerful as I thought. Like, I expected a really genuine step up in performance from the street triple, and when I test rode the bike, I was able to get on a road that went up to 80 kilometers an hour, and you do your best to try and get a feel for it, but until you kind of get out and do a proper ride on the bike, it's very hard on a test ride to feel any issues or problems with the bike. Nonetheless, I think, I don't know what happened, but I took it back out like the next weekend for another quick ride, and this time it was really bad. I was riding along and I thought, God, it feels slow, like it just doesn't feel right at all. And then all of a sudden, as I twist the throttle on, it'd get to a point as the revs would start to build up where it just all of a sudden jerked and lost power. Like it just cut and then came back in and cut, and I'm riding along going like that, and I'm like, what is happening with this bike? So anyway, I got back, started to investigate, you know, lifted the tank up, checked the spark plugs. I replaced the spark plugs, but they look brand new, and I thought there's something else going on here. Checked the air filter was like new, everything was like new. And eventually I thought, well, it looks like it's getting air, it looks like it's getting spark, so is it getting fuel? I tried to drain a bit of fuel out, and when it came out, initially it was very, very brown, very orange I should say. And I thought, okay, we've got problems in the tank here. Opened up the top, couldn't really see a lot in, but when I stuck my sort of phone camera in and got the torch in there, it was absolutely full of rust. Unfortunately, what old mate had done that sold me the bike was to leave. He was running 95 or 98 octane fuel, one of the ones with lots of ethanol in it. He left about a third of a tank, judging by the line in the tank, in this for years and years and years, sitting in the garage. The tank was absolutely full of rust. I've got some pictures, I'll probably put them up on the screen now as I'm talking to you, and try and show you the extent of how bad it was. So the next step, of course, was to take the fuel pump out of the bottom of the tank. If you haven't seen underneath the motorbike tank before, essentially there's kind of looks a bit like this. You undo the screws, and the whole fuel pump comes out of the bottom of the tank. So I took that out, and wow, it just looked like it was full of dirt. It wasn't, it was rust, it was all rust, but it was just this fine powder. It was like coffee grains. You're probably looking at the pictures now. I could not believe the amount that came out of this. What I'd done is, having ridden it again, was just basically I'd filled the tank up to get home. I'd cleaned the inside of the tank, got all the rust off it by bouncing along, and I just pumped it down to the bottom, and it was unbelievable. So anyway, what I eventually had to, I pulled it out, I cleaned the tank. I started off by doing it the old-fashioned way, which was to fill the tank with white vinegar. I think I got a picture there of all the vinegar in the trolley. I bought an absolute shitload, left that in there because of course vinegar does eat away at rust, and you can put metal things into vinegar and it'll eat the rust off. So I ended up putting the vinegar in there, left it for a good 24 hours or more, and it did quite a good job of stripping all the rust off the inside of it. Sort of hosed it out, washed it out. After the vinegar, I washed it, I put it all back together, and I took the injectors out and went and got the injectors cleaned. Oh, look at that, there's actually no gravel on this corner, unbelievable. Took the injectors out, got them cleaned, and the rail as well, the fuel rail. Put them back in, put the tank back together, topped it up with fuel. I'd cleaned the fuel filter out itself. I cleaned the little tea bag thingy at the bottom of it out. Put it all back together, and unfortunately it just didn't want to go. Would not fire, would not start. Didn't even sound like it wanted to start. So in the end I took it up to the motorbike shop, and I think all he did, I explained everything that had happened, and all he did was spray a bit of brake cleaner in the straight down the chute, and it fired and ran just off brake cleaner. So it was definitely a fueling issue, and in the end we decided that the fuel pump was no good. So you think, okay, no dramas, replace the fuel pump, what's that, like 120 bucks or something like that? No, fuel pumps on these things are not $120. Let's go left here. Unfortunately, he had to order a fuel pump in, and in Australian dollars you'll have to convert this yourself unless I put it on the screen. It was around $900 for a fuel pump. That's a lot of money. Like, that is, if you think about the purchase price of the bike, and this was almost immediately within the first week or two I had to do this, and the bike actually spent about 5 weeks off the road. That was everything. That was me trying to fix it myself and diagnose it myself. Then it was taking it to the bike shop. Then it was waiting for the fuel pump to come in. Yeah, so anyway, that's just how much it cost. You could get generic ones, and he did say, look, you can look on eBay, you can find fuel pumps on eBay that claim to do the same thing, claim to be of the same quality, and they're only about, you know, $150 to $300 Australian, sort of in that price bracket. And he said, but do it at your own risk, because he said the amount of blokes that have had this happen, and it happens quite a lot apparently, and he said he's had a number of people buy the cheaper eBay versions for a couple $100, and the bike still doesn't go properly or at all, and they end up bringing it in to the shop, and he ends up having to put the factory replacement part in anyway. So I made the decision with a brand new bike. I'd barely had the opportunity, how you going, big dog? Barely had the opportunity to ride. I thought, I'm just going to do it properly and put the full fuel pump in, and at least I know that it's got brand new spark plugs, the injectors were cleaned, the fuel rail was cleaned, the tank was cleaned, new fuel pump in, and it all runs good. But I guess if I could sum up with a couple of things: number one, if you are going to store your bike for any particular period of time, do one of two things. Either one, put low ethanol fuel in your tank. That's going to be a good tip. The other thing is fill it to the brim. If you know that you're going to leave this thing for 6 or 12 months or whatever, or bloody 9 years as the case may be, fill it to the absolute brim so that it doesn't rust where the fuel is. Don't do what this dude did and leave a third of a tank of fuel and just rust the inside of the tank out. Anyway, hopefully you have learnt something from this video. Something else to look out for if you do happen to be buying a bike that's been sitting for a long time. Check the fuel tank. Make sure it's not full of rust. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit subscribe. Oh, and also please do remember before you go, if you have enjoyed this video, check out my other one. If you like both of them, possibly consider subscribing. I am a nice new YouTube channel. Put any thoughts you've got in the comments, and I look forward to talking to you next time. But for now, it's going to be moo to the cows and goodbye to you.